Hello, and welcome to the Legal Cheek podcast, sponsored by Simpson Thatcher, home of the private equity training contract. My name's Hannah, and I'm an events coordinator here at Legal Cheek. And I'm joined by my colleague Nadia, a writer who also works at Legal Cheek. Today, we're discussing the SQE. More specifically, should I do the SQE even though I don't have a training contract? So, as for those who aren't aware, in order to qualify as a solicitor in the UK, you need to complete the solicitor's qualifying examination, which we know as the SQE, as well as 2 years of qualifying work experience. So for many aspiring solicitors, one of the biggest perks of securing a training contract is having the firm sponsor their SQE preparation and exams. And many firms also provide maintenance grants to support you whilst you study. But as I think we're all very much aware, securing a training contract is far from easy. So self-funding the SQE, I think, is becoming an increasingly common route. So self-funding can seem like a bit of a gamble. So particularly if you look at the SQE pass rates, and there's a lot of kind of fear-mongering around these figures. So I think the January figure of the SQE1 pass rate this year was 51%. So I think those are the kind of figures that we see and get quite scared about. And there is also the rule that if you fail the same part of the SQE 3 times, you have to wait until 6 years have passed from the date of your first assessment before you can take it again. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to talk about when does this risk lead to reward, and is self-funding a sensible investment in your future, or is it more of a risky financial gamble? So for me personally, I'm starting my SQE studies in September next year. So I'm really interested to hear about your experience, Nadia, as someone who's already completed and passed the SQE, and how you found self-funding, and yeah, your particular route to qualification.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the first question that I had was, why did you decide to start the SQE without having a training contract lined up?
I think a big part of it was just sort of simply where I was at the time. Like I just graduated university and I was kind of having this slightly like panicked feeling of, oh my God, what am I gonna do next? Like I don't want to do a master's. And I didn't like you said, I didn't have a training contract lined up and I didn't really think about anything else other than like TCs really.
Yeah.
And so I was like, gosh, what am I gonna do after this? And I just have always preferred maybe like keeping busy and like having something to work towards. So yeah, when it came to finishing university and not really having like a next step in mind, like it was quite daunting just for me personally. I know like some people obviously like to take a bit of a break, but I was just like panicking. And then a few of my friends, they were starting the SQE, some also self-funded, some like via like the TC route. And so it kind of maybe I was a bit more like influenced in that sense. Like I knew people that were going into it. And so it felt like a good option for me to consider. And then me personally, I was like fortunate enough to be able to self-fund and have that support, which I guess kind of made that even a viable decision in the first place, because as you mentioned, it is quite a financial commitment. But because I was able to have that support, that kind of made that option like viable for me, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like that makes sense in terms of like staying busy. I know that I kind of relate of because I finished uni and then went straight into the law conversion, and I kind of yeah also was like I need to make sure that I keep busy. So I think that that is true. And did you ever consider kind of waiting until you secured a training contract, or
Yeah.
did you think actually this is definitely what I want to do?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely did consider, yeah, sort of waiting because obviously, like the best thing is to have a firm sponsor you, and like we already said, like it's a bit of a financial commitment. But obviously, like you said in your intro, training contract applications are like competitive, and there's obviously no guarantee that maybe I would just apply and then get one straight off the bat. And I did like I said about like the whole panicking thing, I didn't really like think of kind of what else to do. I think I just like it got to the end of uni and I was so focused on exams and getting through uni that I didn't really think about the aftermath. And then when it got to the end, I was like, that was the only clear route in my mind, just because it already relates to what I was studying. Like I'm sure I could have found like a part-time job elsewhere or just worked somewhere else for a bit, but because I was so consumed by uni and studying and exams and it got to the end and everyone was moving on to this like training contract chapter, that's why my head was thinking about the SQE. But I did
Yeah.
consider waiting for one, but I was just like, I just want to get this over and done with. And then
But I
also
think,
like, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, and also like,
yeah,
with the timing as well, because I just finished university and finished exams, I was kind of already in this like studying groove. And obviously the SQE involves so much studying. So I was just like, well, I've just finished studying, though I've graduated, like I've been studying for all my life at that point. So what's another year? Like it didn't feel like such a huge ask in that sense, because I know some people say it's quite tricky to like maybe have a break and then go back to being a student. So I thought like, well, let me just continue being a student. And because I didn't want to do a master's, it's kind of like, I mean, the SQE prep course that I did anyway is attached to a master's course actually. So I did have a master's like towards the end, but it was just like kind of getting it out of the way regardless, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was actually going to say was that I think that's what I've heard from a lot of people is that it is hard because when you're really in the groove of studying and you know what works for you, and
Yeah.
also having actual like because obviously I'm assuming you did a law degree,
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
actually had like certain things fresh in your
Hmm.
mind. And when I was doing the law conversion this year, actually, one of my tutors said that the people that do the best at their like SQE course are the
Hmm.
people that have come straight out of
Hmm.
either the PGDL
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a
Or
law
uni.
degree
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you have years out, like obviously,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
the content is going to be less fresh. So I feel like
Yes.
that is
Yes.
actually a really good point.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm also, I guess I'm kind of interested in knowing more about kind of the financial side of the SQE. So obviously the fees of each exam, I think they're around 4,000 each.
Hmm.
Oh no, maybe I think SQE1, SQE2, they total
Yeah.
around
I think that's right. Yeah. I think they
4,900.
total. Yeah.
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 But then also there's obviously the course,
Hmm.
like the costs of prep courses and
Yeah.
also living costs. So yeah, I'm just interested to know kind of how the financial side of the SQE factored into your decision.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, like it's, like it's a very important sort of decision that I had to make. But I appreciate obviously self-funding is, not an option for a lot of people. It is a significant amount of money as well. I think for me, it's because I was able to sort of receive that support and I was able to self-fund. I think what my mindset going into it was more like, do I really want to be a solicitor? Because if I'm self-funding, then I really need to be sure that I want to do this. I guess it's different. Like when a firm sponsors you, you might do your training contract, and then after that realize it's not for you, but you've not really like, I guess, spent that money. But because I was self-funding, that was more of like what I was thinking about going into it. Like, okay, do I really want to be a solicitor? And then like in the end, ultimately, like I did, and I do. And so though it was a significant amount of money, I guess I could kind of like be okay with it and rationalize that by being confident in that this like route and this decision for me is the one that I wanted to take.
Yeah,
But again, like totally understand that it's, a lot of money and like for some people waiting for a training contract is the most like viable route. And to be honest, if I had a training contract way back when, I would have also obviously loved for a firm to sponsor me. So it's not like I'm saying
yeah,
one is better than the other or anything like that. But I think for me, it was just more like I was comfortable maybe making that investment because I was sure that I wanted to be a solicitor. And anyway, during my SQE exams, which I'm sure we'll get onto, I was doing applications. So that even showed me like that, okay, I'm doing the right thing because I do really want to pursue this route, basically.
yeah, of course. And I guess if you did a law degree, so from the time
Yeah.
that you were like
Mhm.
18, I guess maybe
Mhm.
even 17 when you were applying to university, you knew that law was what
Yeah.
you wanted to pursue. So, and you studied it for 3 years. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I also kind of wanted to know, so kind of like mentally when you were studying for the
Mhm.
SQE, did you find that like having not secured a training contract, like did it affect the experience at all?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. I think in terms of maybe like the actual SQE experience, like if we're talking studying for the exams, I don't think it was particularly different because obviously we all do the same exams, we all read the same content, we all study the same amount of time and all these kind of things. And all of our anxieties are probably all the same for like wanting to pass and that kind of stuff. I guess the
Mhm.
main difference was probably like maybe like the type of pressure, because obviously if well, like if you're self-funded like I was, then maybe the only pressure is coming like from yourself. Like you've obviously got self-discipline, you want to pass first try and all those kinds of things. But obviously, if you're sponsored by a firm, then there's that added pressure of like maybe the firm's sort of watching you and like maybe they're monitoring your grades. And like this is just like another external pressure other than what you put on yourself.
Yeah.
And I suppose, like some firms have like a one sit policy, so that might be playing on your mind as well. But even though the SQE, like each exam, SQE1 and SQE2, have 3 sittings each, I know some firms only have this like one sit policy. Whereas because I was self-funded, like technically if I didn't pass the first time, I could like go ahead and do it 2 more times after that. And it wouldn't maybe necessarily reflect bad on me because obviously a firm didn't like sponsor me. So it's like, well, I failed, but you guys didn't like invest money in me, so you can't hold that against me. So I
True.
think in that sense, maybe the pressure was just I was putting pressure on myself because obviously I wanted to pass first time.
Yeah.
Whereas like my friends who obviously were sponsored, maybe they had this external pressure. And I know they had to like some firms, they monitor more closely than others, and maybe you have to like send in your grades or always keep them in the loop. So that's also another I guess type of pressure they felt that perhaps like yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, I guess it's just like less of an external pressure, but you're still going to be, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah,
as
it's still
students
hard.
and
Yeah, the exam is still hard like for everyone, and the exam is the exact same for everybody. But yeah, it's probably maybe just like this external pressure that was maybe missing. Yeah.
yeah, of course. So like you mentioned earlier that you were doing like applications alongside studying. So
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of wanted to know more about like what else you were doing outside of just studying for the SQE and kind of how you actually managed to balance everything. Because I know I was doing applications whilst doing the law
Hmm.
conversion, and it's just
I
like
know.
so much. Like applications are just a
I think
whole
applications are like a full-time job in
yeah,
itself.
exactly.
Like, like
Yeah,
almost like when I was doing applications, it felt like I was clocking on in the morning, right? What do I have to do today? Filling in the random like questions that I had left, and then submitting, and then doing a
yeah,
stage for a next firm. It's like, oh my God. And then you like clock off in the evening and do it again.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So I honestly during the SQE time, because I like was juggling applications and obviously SQE revision, that's literally all I dedicated my time to. Like I wasn't doing anything else. I was head down in studying and what was I saying? Oh yeah, doing applications, which again is obviously like a fortunate position to be in. Obviously, I totally understand. I know some people in my classes actually were doing it part-time because they had to obviously work. And some people were doing it part-time, not even for work purposes, but maybe there was actually some like mature students who maybe had like children at home. And so that was another reason why they were doing it part-time. But I was able to like be in the position where I could just focus on studying and then obviously have these applications on the side. So that's kind of what I was doing during that year. But yeah, it was hard to be honest. Obviously, like the SQE is a significant commitment. You're like studying, well, not even studying, you're in classes like every week. And then on top of that, you obviously have to try and keep up with the content and then study when you have mocks. And then obviously eventually sit the exams. And then like we've just discussed, the applications have like a million stages. So
yeah,
so sometimes I would be so happy that I would get to the next stage, and then I'm like, wait, now I have to do another stage.
yeah, exactly. It's like the relief of getting to the next stage is so short because then
Yeah,
you're like, I'm stressed again. Like,
exactly. Um, but
yeah,
yeah, so I think like in terms of managing it all, and I'm sure like people have said this all the time, and it's like the most basic advice, but it's obviously just like prioritizing and like maybe using like a diary if that's like someone's forte. I know
yeah,
I did that. And yeah, just prioritize things like when I was starting the SQE course, I guess I wouldn't say it was more quiet, but like, yeah, it was just like early weeks where it was more like introductory classes. So I could afford to maybe focus more on applications and maybe attend like open days and things like that because usually those are early on in the application cycle anyway. But then when it came to like January time, those things were already over, and so my focus kind of shifted, and I was like, right, I need to like lock in because my exam is literally in January. So then I was more so focusing on SQE revision. So it kind of just depends on what's like important at the time. But
Yeah.
I will say though, like a lot of my friends were like not surprised, but maybe like I don't know what the right word is, but they were like surprised, shall we say, that I decided to do applications while doing the SQE because both things are like huge time commitments. So I wouldn't like recommend that to anyone because I was
Yeah.
incredibly burnt out.
Yeah.
And obviously for me, it worked out in the end. Like I managed to secure a TC and obviously passed the SQE. But that's not something I'm advocating for. Like I do, if you know yourself and you know that you can only do like one thing, then either don't do the SQE and obviously prioritize applications and hopefully get a TC, or if you're able to self-fund the SQE, then do the SQE, just focus on that, pass it, and then the next cycle you can obviously focus on applications. Um,
Yeah. That's nice. Yeah. I was also interested, like, kind of day to day, what your routine looked like. So obviously you're in classes, but I
mhm.
mean, I feel like that's something that I also want to know is just how many like
Yeah,
hours of classes were
yeah,
you in, and how much of it was kind of just like self-directed
yeah.
study. Yeah.
So in terms of I don't know the exact number of hours, but I know that you have, I think it's 6 modules like in total. I think
Yeah.
it's six or maybe it's seven, I don't know. And each week you'll have a workshop for each module, and it's broken down into units. So let's just take criminal for example. Maybe you're on week 2, so that's unit 2, and it's about like gosh, like bringing someone into the police station because there's like routines and procedures for that.
Yeah.
And so that week will just be on that, and the allocated reading, like you'll be told what reading is for that specific like unit. So it's easy to manage in the sense of like you're not like staring at a huge chunk of content and not knowing where to begin. It's all broken up by like the week, and
Yeah.
each week has its own specific reading. And then with so the thing I mentioned about the police thing, I would say that's like practical law. And then
Okay.
there's also underlying law that we probably learned at uni or during the PGDL, like criminal law, that would also match like that unit. Sometimes it doesn't match, but it's just they're like, okay, read this chapter because you just need to know the underlying law.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually match up, but they will tell you like what chapter for the practical, what chapter for the underlying. So you do that beforehand and you come to the workshop, with your questions. There's like exercises to kind of see what that content looks like in practice. And then you also do like practice MCQs, which is obviously the way the SQE1 is assessed.
Yeah.
And then yeah, if you have any questions, you can ask your module leader. So that kind of format is repeated for every single module. And I think some modules have like 6 or 7 units. Some maybe have a bit more. So it really just depends on how many units. Um, and in terms of like how many days I was in, again, it depends on your timetable. I know some people were maybe in just 2 days a week, but then those 2 days were like packed with all the workshops. I think mine was a bit more spread out. I had like 3 days or something like that. Yeah, it just depends on what timetable you get, but that's generally how I guess the day to day looks. And then in terms of you said like whether there's a lot of self-study, I would say yes, because okay, so this is my tip. I don't know if people agree with this, but my tip is basically even if you're reading the underlying law or the practical law, but
Yeah.
before you enter the workshop, like before, and you don't understand, I genuinely think you should just make the notes regardless because there's like no time to say, oh, like I don't understand this, so I'll come back to it later. Because when teaching ends to when the
Yeah.
exam begins, there's like only a few weeks. And so if you haven't written your notes, you're like now regretting it and you have to go back in time when really
Yeah.
that time should be used to just like reading the notes you've already made. Does that make sense? So like
Yeah.
I sometimes would not understand something and I would just make notes anyway. And I'm like, okay, this seems logical. I'm just gonna write it down, even though I don't get it. And then
Yeah.
later on, I'd come back and try to understand it as opposed to starting notes from fresh. So that's like the self-study. You should be like writing notes and trying obviously to understand as best you can.
Yeah.
Because the workshops they are conducted on the basis that you have understood. Obviously, you can ask a question, but it's not like they're gonna go into the nitty-gritty of things. They're kind of talking about it at a high level. So you have to have
Yeah.
like that like context, I suppose, and background
Yeah.
knowledge to kind of understand what's going on. So it is a lot.
That makes sense. I feel like there is just so much content that you do just kind
Yeah,
of have like an overall like bird's eye
exactly.
view almost. And
Mhm.
like one thing that my tutor on the PGDL
Mhm.
course that's also like mainly an SQE tutor said was that this is like some advice that she gave. She was like, you're never going to know absolutely everything. So
Mhm.
I'll be interested to hear your perspective on this, but she said that there's some things that you should just completely park and just be like, at most that's going to be one question on the paper.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
pass
yeah,
rate is so low that there's some like things that
yeah,
you can just be like, I'm fine with not knowing that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, I think there's an element of that. I think I do 100% agree that you will not be able to remember or know everything or even understand everything. There's too much.
yeah,
And yeah, I think there's 90 questions, 90 questions. So it's not even that many. Well, it is a lot of questions, but it doesn't cover like everything, obviously. Um, but I think it's tricky in the sense of you don't actually know what topic, like let's if you break it down to like subtopics, is going
yeah,
to be assessed. So yes, you can maybe afford to not understand something to its like full de detail, but you should still try and understand it a little bit because I remember like when I was doing it, a lot of people said that like EU law is not going to come, like who cares about EU law? And then my paper had so much EU law and not just EU law like as we know it now, like post-Brexit. I had a lot of pre-Brexit like
really.
things. Yeah. And that is something that you might think might not come because why the hell am I being assessed on pre-Brexit things? But I was. And also
Okay.
each SQE paper, so you could be in your exam hall and your friend right next to you has a totally different paper to you because they kind of like produce like different variations of the exam and they randomize it just so like I guess for like cheating purposes or I don't really know what it is, but like that's basically what they do. So I had like loads of EU law, but my friend who sat right next to me didn't. And so even though I literally don't understand EU law, I like knowing this fact before going into it, I try to understand every topic, like at least a little bit, just so that I
Yeah,
can, gain a few points here and there.
I guess that makes sense in terms of MCQs because at least you can give like, potentially the
Hmm.
most
Yeah,
logical answer. You don't
exactly.
have to be everything. If you know
Yeah,
something, you can go with something which feels,
yeah, which feels the
yeah,
most correct. Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, okay, great. So yeah, I guess I'm really interested also in knowing about like kind of the training contract application
Mhm.
process alongside the SQE. So
Yeah,
like, did it ever come up in applications or interviews? And
yeah.
do you think it actually maybe even strengthened your position as an applicant, kind of already doing the SQE?
It's a good question. I think it didn't made like a material difference in terms of how like maybe attractive I was to like grad rec in itself because obviously most firms are prepared to fund the SQE for future trainees anyway. So then it wouldn't be fair if someone who's self-funded it then is viewed in a better light because well you're prepared to sponsor students regardless. So yeah, it doesn't really make sense. And
Yeah,
it's never come up in applications or interviews in the sense of like, why did I choose to self-fund and things like that? Because I guess ultimately that is like a personal decision and it doesn't like make me a better or worse applicant if I like kind of chose to self-fund. But where I think it made a difference is just like my own understanding. So I think I mentioned in the beginning that the course I did was attached to like an LLM. And I'm pretty
yeah,
sure like even if you do it with firms, like it's also attached to this like sort of LLM part to it where I think the whole point is you choose modules. Like if you're with a firm, you would choose modules that the firm, I guess, is like specializes in. So let's say like M&A, competition law, those kind of things. And I think it's designed to just like have trainees come in with at least some background context before they begin. And so even the course I did like I enrolled myself into is also attached to this LLM shenanigans. So I chose modules like debt finance, M&A, competition, because I guess that's kind of like the route that I wanted to go for, like commercial solicitor vibes. And so yeah, the modules do give you like some sort of exposure to like concepts and like yeah, like I said, background knowledge. And so I guess when I was applying to firms and when I eventually got to stages like a group stage or like
yeah,
even a written assessment, I suppose in that sense, because I had some sort of understanding and I could maybe point out things that maybe someone who's in their second year of uni might not have known, or like, yeah, or like think about things in like a commercial way, as they say.
yeah.
So I wouldn't say it made applications easier, but I guess it means that I just like, yeah, kind of had this like understanding more quickly, and I was able to speak about them with maybe like slightly more confidence. But that's not to say obviously that someone who hasn't done the SQE or this LLM part will like not obviously not get a training contract, because we
Yeah.
know that that's not the case. It's usually, or like if you're lucky, it will obviously be training contract first, and then you enroll into the SQE. So obviously that's not the case, but I guess it doesn't hurt to have like a little bit of knowledge. And so that's when I think I noticed the difference, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense with the knowledge. I wonder if also, so I know that the SQE too is like has like
Mhm.
different components to it. I wonder if
Mhm.
any of the skills that you're kind of learning in the
Yeah.
SQE two
Yeah.
components might come into the different various
Yeah. Yeah.
stages,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Like,
pre-processing.
some firms have like written assessments where I think you have to like draft a client email, or maybe sometimes it's like an email to a partner. And SQE2 does have like the assessments called legal writing. And in that you are tasked to, sometimes the tasks is like you've got this like massive load of information, you need to synthesize it and then sort of like write an email to the target audience. So in that sense, like, yeah, that definitely helped because I'd already practiced it in SQE2, and I maybe like already thought about, right, if it's a client, I need to tweak my wording. If it's this person, I need to tweak my wording. So in that sense, yes. And then also SQE2 has like some oral exams. So like obviously training contract applications doesn't have any advocacy exams assessments, but in the sense of like I think it just gave me more confidence in terms of speaking, because
Yeah.
I don't like, it's not like I don't like speaking, but I think like when I'm talking about something that I might not necessarily know too much about, then I kind of get in my head. But
Mhm.
during the SQ2 exams, there were many times where I didn't know what I was talking about, but I had to push through anyway because I'm being assessed. And so I guess that kind of confidence of just, yeah, like being able to explain something, even though you don't know quite what you're explaining, that
Yeah.
kind of translated into like a group stage at an assessment center. Or I think one time I had an assessment where I had to give like a presentation to like
Yeah.
clients. So yeah, just like that kind of like soft skills, I suppose.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that really makes sense because I know that with a lot of like the kind of partner briefing or like group exercises in the
Hmm.
training in the assessment centers,
Yeah.
like a lot of it is you don't have enough time to fully prepare
Yeah.
for the presentation you're about to give, and that's kind of done on purpose. And so, yeah, you're so right that it's like, yeah, being really confident and being able to give the best possible presentation in the time
Yeah.
you've got. Amazing. So it's more of like a general question, but if someone wants to start progressing towards qualification without a training contract, is there anything that you think they should know or be aware of before they start that?
I would say obviously like you need to think about obviously like the financial commitment, time commitment. It's a demanding course, like Um, and if you choose to like apply for training contracts alongside like I did, like you should be obviously prepared for like an intense period. Um, like you might be, like we said before, revising for the SQE one day and then having to attend an open day the next day and then kind of fitting that into your application. So it is a lot. But also I wanted to mention like it's important to know that a training contract, I guess, in the traditional sense, is not the only route to qualification. Like
Yeah,
it's probably the like most common route that us like students and like university students, I mean, are like used to, or like sorry, no. But
yeah,
like the whole point of the SQ and why they brought it in was that it's like qualifying work experience alongside sitting these exams, and that might include like a legal clinic, volunteering, or anything else that like qualifies for that. And so to someone who's wanting to just do the SQE and not have a training contract, it might be because they already know that they want to go this certain way, or they've already like started gaining qualifying work experience and they want that to actually count.
yeah,
And then eventually they can obviously apply for admission as a solicitor. Yeah, that's what it is.
yeah,
So I guess like not having a training contract doesn't mean that you can't start progressing towards like qualification.
yeah,
It's just like you need to think maybe like what route makes sense for you. And obviously like training contracts are not the most easiest, but maybe when you're like looking at like progression, it makes like the most sense because it's the one that's the most talked about. Like, okay, you get your training contract, you sit the SQE, you're there for 2 years, you rotate, and then you qualify. Like it's like they've kind of like put it out for us to understand, and maybe other routes are not that clear cut. But totally like if you want to like just start gaining qualifying work experience in other avenues, like even paralegaling counts as qualifying
Yeah,
work experience, and then you can be admitted as a solicitor once you've accumulated the amount of time. I would say like, yeah, go for it and yeah, do the SQE. But
yeah,
obviously it is a financial commitment.
yeah.
Just
So I
just
think
know
that's
that you're just make the right decision, basically.
yeah. So many different routes to qualification. You're right that we hear so much about training contracts, but there's so
Yeah.
many different ways to get to like the final
Hmm.
end goal. Yeah, so I guess thank you very much. I'm not sure there's anything else that you wanted to say, any final words of advice, or I think we've covered most of
Final words of
them.
advice. I think, yeah, I mean, like just in general, like don't worry if you haven't obviously secured a training contract. Like I hadn't at the time, and then obviously, and now I have. Um, but also like don't jump straight into the SQE if you're A, unsure that you want to be a solicitor, or B, like it's a huge financial commitment. And for most, like I said before, like if I was in that position to have a firm sponsor me, I would have done it. It's not that
Yeah,
I wouldn't have or anything. And both sort of like routes are totally valid, like either waiting or self-funding if you're in that position to do so. But even if you have a firm sponsor you, it's still thinking about the same questions of do you actually want to be a solicitor? Because even for the firm, it's like an investment and they're like spending time investing in you and resources. So I think just in general, like with the SQE and like with this profession, I would say it's one where you need to just take a step back, don't like maybe follow the crowd if your friends are doing it and just think like, is this something you want to do? Because it is a huge commitment,
yeah,
time-wise, financially, and, sanity wise.
yeah, yeah. So true. Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
I think that's it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I feel like I know a lot more about the SQE after that as well.
I'm happy
Yeah,
to help.
thank you very much.
All
So,
right.
the Legal Cheat podcast is sponsored by Simpson Thatcher, home of the private equity training contract. We'll see you soon.